New Orleans Saints safety Julian Blackman may be out for the rest of the year, and so that means it could be time for rookie Jonas Sanker to take the reins. We got all that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, your friend, Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints as a Saints beat writer over at LouisianaSports.net. And on today's episode of Locked On Saints, we're going to take a look at the Saints doing some great things with their pass rush, as well as giving you the lowdown on what happened on Blake Grupe's missed field goal. We'll dive into all that. We're also going to take a look at some of the numbers that you need to know, including 13 penalties being the most in a game for the New Orleans Saints since 2017. We're going to kick everything off, though, with the biggest story around the New Orleans Saints today, and that, of course, is the injury to Julian Blackman, which could end his season. Where the Saints go from here, what the injury means, and who could be next up. We'll dive into all of that on today's episode. We appreciate you very much, as always, for being here with us, whether it's your first time or your next time, being here with us this time, making us your first listen, and being an everydayer here on the show, which is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 for your first bet, and if that bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Head to FanDuel.com today to get started. The New Orleans Saints could be without Julian Blackman for the remainder of the 2025 NFL season. It's unfortunate. Defensive coordinator Brandon Staley has wanted Julian Blackman on his team since Julian Blackman came into the league 5-6 years ago, and gets him for one game, and now an injury, torn labrum, as has been reported, could potentially end his season. That's very much the expectation at this point. We'll dive into how the injury happened, or rather how the Saints found out about the injury in a little bit. But what I want to focus on right now is what this means for the outcome and how this impacts the outlook of the New Orleans Saints defense. And I will say this, losing Julian Blackman takes the New Orleans Saints opportunities to get takeaways and to take the football away in 2025 and severely diminishes it. Julian Blackman is the guy that was going to go out there and get interceptions. He's the guy that was the easy pick to lead the team in interceptions after the retirement of Tyrann Mathieu. Being able to go from Tyrann Mathieu and Will Harris to Justin Reid and Julian Blackman was a really sweet setup for the New Orleans Saints. And now that sounds like that will no longer be the case for them. The biggest impact is the loss of opportunity to take the football away. So someone else is going to have to step up in that category. Whether it's Kool-Aid McKinstry or Isaac Yiadom on the outside at corner, whether it's Alontae Taylor on the inside, whether it's Justin Reid or whoever it is that steps in place of Julian Blackman, that is going to be the measure by which you're taking a look to say, okay, did the Saints improve, or did the Saints, or rather not improve, but did the Saints find a way to keep the ship afloat over on the defensive side from a takeaway perspective without Julian Blackman? So it's going to be up to those players to go out there, take the football away in the passing game, in order to try to lessen the severity of this loss, which is not officially season ending at this time, at the time that I'm recording this, but is very much effectively expected to be season ending. So who steps into the role? Well, it might be time for rookie Jonas Sanker already. Now, listen, Jordan Howden has the seniority and he has the NFL experience, right? A little bit more NFL experience. The Saints have kind of leaned that way. You'll notice this past week, guys like Christian Boyd as well as Vernon Broughton were inactive for this game, or for the game up against the Arizona Cardinals. And in exchange for that, they had guys like Jonathan Bullard and Jonah Williams who were active. So the Saints continue to lean on experience over potential here early on in the season. We saw that with position battles in the offseason. We saw that with the quarterback battle as well, even though Spencer Rattler won and earned that opportunity. Tyler Shuck, though, very much ready and waiting in the wings to get his opportunity. And I think he'll eventually get his opportunity during the season, because I expect that the Saints are going to make sure they get a look at both of these guys throughout 2025, unless Spencer Rattler does enough to convince them otherwise, which is very possible. Or rather, the possibility is there. And so for New Orleans, they have consistently leaned on veteran experience. So it would not surprise me to see Jordan Howden get the nod. However, Jordan Howden was questionable going into last week's game or going into Sunday's game and did not play because of the oblique injury that he's dealing with. So that could potentially have an impact on this conversation as well. Do you go with the guy that's more experienced but has missed time more recently? Or do you go with the guy that's maybe less experienced but has a lot of potential and has a lot of talent? And so you're going to have to make that decision if you're the New Orleans Saints. We'll see which way they go. I feel like because of the versatility, I mean, you listen to Brandon Staley, you listen to Terry Joseph, the passing game coordinator who works with the safeties, you listen to Kellen Moore. Every time that they talk about the safety position, what's the first thing that they highlight? They highlight versatility. The fact that these guys in Julian Blackman and Justin Reed can cover, but they can also come down and make tackles in the box. You hear other players talk about them as well. And so when I think about that from the player perspective, that's very much what Jonas Sanker was in college at Virginia. He played deep safety. He came down into the box. He played at nickel. He had some outside corner experience, right? Like there's a lot of different things that he's done. So if the Saints are going to lean on versatility over pure coverage ability, then Jonas Sanker probably gets the nod in this situation. So the third round rookie could see not just action, but starting action in just week 2 of the NFL season here as he goes through. I also think that a lot of this season is about seeing what you have in your young players and seeing what you have in your future. You're taking inventory this year. And so getting that inventory and that evaluation on Jonas Sanker this early is not a negative thing. Does it stink to not have, if you're the Saints, to lose some veteran experience at a very important position? Of course, 100% it does. But if you want to take a look at an opportunity that comes from this, here it is. A chance to get a look at a guy that you invested in highly with a top 100 selection in the third round of this year's NFL draft. And now you have the opportunity to potentially get him out on the field and get him active here very early. We'll see which way the Saints go with it. I asked Kellen Moore if they knew already where they want to go. It sounds like they feel like they have a lot of options. And so they'll kind of see what it is that they want to do with their game plan this weekend and then maybe make the decision based off that, I imagine is what's kind of hanging in the air. But I have a sneaking suspicion that the Saints know exactly what it is that they want to do. They're just not going to tell me. And that makes perfect sense. They're not going to tell anybody because they want that to be kind of under wraps. But we'll get a better idea of it as we go on throughout the week. And we'll see kind of where things go as we hear more. Now, this injury was a surprise one because Julian Blackman did 100% of the snaps on Sunday's game up against the Arizona Cardinals. We asked Kellen Moore about that. He said basically what happened was that Julian Blackman got home on Sunday night and then realized that what he was feeling wasn't soreness, but might be an injury. Went in Monday morning, got checked out, and that's where they found the shoulder issue, which has been reported as a torn labrum. And so with that, that's kind of the way that it works out. Adrenaline is a really special thing, I guess, in some situations, right? We see this with NFL players sometimes where they don't realize that they're hurt until they get home later on in the night. And then they go, oh, that's not sore. Like that's a problem. And that sounds like that's kind of what happened here for Julian Blackman. So overall, an unfortunate situation, but an opportunity to potentially get an early look at a promising young rookie. Coming up next, let's take a look at some numbers that you need to know, including the last time the New Orleans Saints had 13 penalties in a game, they scored 52 points. We'll get to that next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints is brought to you by our friends over at Supply House. When the clock is ticking on some of those big projects or new repairs that you have, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today, and then you'll see parts on your doorstep tomorrow with over 280,000, maybe even over 283,000 different plumbing, HVAC, electrical system parts, whatever it is that you're looking for, all from trusted brands in the business. Real-time inventory as well as honest lead time helps to make sure that you're not punting on home projects like I do pretty often, while industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. So head over today. You can join the Trade Master program. That's going to get you some serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, as well as a dedicated support line. So go and check them out. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHNFL5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. Today's episode brought to you by our friends over at Game Time, the best place to go to buy last-minute tickets for your favorite events, sports, concerts, comedy, theater. There's so much that you can find there. So if you're like me and you decide last minute you want to go and check out a football game. Maybe you want to go and watch LSU, Tulane, go and watch the New Orleans Saints. Well, I highly recommend grabbing the Game Time app and checking the prices there. I was taking a look at some of the prices over on Game Time, pulled up the app, and in just a couple of taps, I saw some amazing deals. And I'm talking about your favorite NFL games and teams for as low as $100 a ticket. A ton of opportunities there. And all fees are included. So that means that the price that you see is the price that you actually pay. You even see views from your seats before you buy the tickets as well. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. All right, family, time to dive into some of the numbers that you need to know. Let's go beyond the box score for the New Orleans Saints in their loss to the Arizona Cardinals. One of the big reasons why the New Orleans Saints feel that they lost this game was because of the undisciplined moments that led to penalties. The New Orleans Saints had 13 penalties. We saw about 7 of those as pre-snap infractions. That includes things like false starts and illegal shifts and illegal formations in some cases. But then we also saw some things like illegal man downfield and all those other pieces. So there were a few other things that were in there, defensive pass interference, all that. But overall, 13 total penalties. And when I see a number like that, I don't just sit back and go, oh, look, it's 13 penalties. I want to know the last time that there was that many penalties in a game, all that. And so I went through and I scoured to figure out how many accepted penalties the Saints had in games until I found 13 again or more. And the last time that the Saints had 13 or more penalties goes all the way back to 2017 in week 6 up against the Detroit Lions. Now you might be wondering, did they win or lose that game? They actually won that game, but it took them scoring 52 points to do so. You might remember that game. It was an absolutely the way that I always think about this 52-38 win by the New Orleans Saints is that if it was like at that time in 2017, if it was like the Patriots and the Rams or something like that, then all of a sudden, like, that would be considered a classic. Like, that game had defensive touchdowns, fumbles in the end zone, turnovers that led to more scores, deep passes down the field, big runs. It had everything in that game. But it's never really referred to as like one of the great games because it was the New Orleans Saints coming off of, by the way, 3 straight 7-9 seasons, 14, 15, and 16. So this was one of those games where the new draft class really showed up, right? Like really started to solidify itself. It had shown for those first 4 games, and they had that bye week in week 5, and then they came back in week 6. And this was one where like Marshawn Lattimore made plays, and like all these other guys made plays. Alvin Kamara looked good, like all that. After Alvin Kamara was already playing so well, they traded Adrian Peterson to the Arizona Cardinals, blah, 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 blah. So for that game, it took 52 points to win it, and 13 penalties might be a part of the reason why Detroit was able to go out there and still put 38 points up in that season. And it's probably why it took 52 points for the New Orleans Saints to win. But that was the last time that the Saints had 13 penalties in a game. And to the New Orleans Saints credit, and to the New Orleans Saints defense's credit, if the Saints offense had scored 52 points, or offense and defense combined had scored 52 points, they would have won that game as well. That's what I want to go into next. New Orleans Saints defense, despite the one big completion down the right sideline for 45 yards, the Saints only gave up about 200 passing yards in that matchup. We thought that there was going to be a lot more going on. Trey McBride and Marvin Harrison Jr. and the kind of and Kyler Murray, his ability to extend plays and maybe get some broken plays and things like that. I thought that the Saints defense, as I went through and I watched the tape, actually did a pretty good job. The majority of Kyler Murray's passes were within 20 yards. In fact, there were only 6 total passes in this game combined between Spencer Rattler and Kyler Murray that went beyond 20 yards from the line of scrimmage, or 20 air yards, if you will. And so I think that for that, like, that's a big part that maybe we glossed over a little bit right after the game, is that the Saints defense actually held up pretty well, particularly in the passing game. And it's not like Arizona went away from the passing game. They threw nearly 30 times, 29 times in this game. So they were very much about going out there and trying to throw the football. And, despite all that, Kyler Murray is still walking away with only just over, what was it, 163 passing yards in this game. And so for me, like, that was another big thing that I really kind of took away from this game as I went back and watched it. And you saw, I mean, the loss of Julian Blackman comes back here because there were so many plays to where Arizona had dialed up something deep, but Julian Blackman was in good coverage, and it forced Kyler Murray to look elsewhere. Like, if there was a stat, I think the real way that we should be evaluating secondary play in the NFL, defensive back play in the NFL, is not how many times they were targeted because they were the closest defender to something that they might not have even been on the, in the assignment for. It's not about them being the closest defender. It's how many times were they in good enough coverage to make the quarterback move on to their next progression. Like, I think that's really the way we should be evaluating secondary play. It's why tape is so important in addition to analytics. And so I think that the Saints did a really good job kind of across the board there. And then, of course, a big play here or there and everything. Don't get me wrong. Those are going to happen. But overall, I thought that the Saints performed pretty well in that area. Running back rushing yards took a big dip going from the first half into the second half. First half running backs averaged 6.7 yards per carry. Going into the second half, they averaged just 1.36 yards per carry. So this was a big part of the inefficiency in the run game that forced the Saints away from the run game. I wonder if they would have stuck with it, if they eventually would have kind of, broken through a little bit, as it were, and gotten back to producing there. But the Saints were really, really efficient running in the first half, particularly running in the middle. Eric McCoy was the key blocker on a couple of different nice runs, including ones that went for 9 yards, some that went for 8 yards, one that went to the 18-yard rush by Alvin Kamara. He was a big part of that as well. That schemed up blocking scheme was so good on that play to where you had just the blockers doing a really good job getting their numbers, their back to the rushing lane. You saw that on both sides where they effectively created a tunnel in depth on that play. And you saw Alvin Kamara be able to break through there. That was a really, really nice stuff. And so there were a few of those moments there where you could see, man, like what they did in the first half, they just were not able to replicate in effectiveness in the second half. And some of that had to do with what Arizona was doing, but other parts of it just was, the Saints not really necessarily being able to bridge that gap from the first half to the second half. And we saw that in a few different categories, right? We saw that in the passing game and in the rushing game as well. And so I think New Orleans being able to keep that push, because if you watch the first half, the Saints did something on the offensive line that they did not do very well at all last year, which is that they got push on that offensive line. They reset the offensive line quite a bit, or the line of scrimmage, quite a bit, that offensive line did. And so I think that was something that really kind of aided them big time. The Saints ran motion on 39 of their, or pre-snap motion on 39 of their plays in this game. That tied them for number 9 in the NFL. So you're seeing the easy buttons still there. However, one easy button that they didn't use very often was play action. Did not run a lot of play action in this game. So looking forward to seeing how the Saints and Kellen Moore get that more involved in their offense over the course of the next few weeks, while keeping that pre-snap motion as well. All right, coming up next, the New Orleans Saints defense on the pass rush side absolutely showed out, and they did it for the first time in a while. We got that coming up for you next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure that you're getting started with this season with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your $5 bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets across the app. That's $300 in bonus bets. All you got to do is win your first $5 bet. So here's what you do. Look at this weekend's upcoming lineup of week 2 games. Right now, a massive heavy favorite are the Baltimore Ravens, who are probably going to be playing a little PO'd after last week's loss up against the Buffalo Bills. They're taking on the Cleveland Browns, who just lost a game to the Cincinnati Bengals, where the Bengals only had 7 total yards of offense in the second half. The Baltimore Ravens are at 11.5-point favorite. Throw $5 down on the money line there. You could walk away with $300 in bonus bets to use after that. So are you ready to play? Then download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. The New Orleans Saints got 5 sacks in their game up against the Arizona Cardinals, and it's been a little while since they've done that, relatively speaking. We appreciate you very much as always, for being here with us. Don't forget, you can catch us every Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. over on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network, followed immediately by Locked On Pelicans, Locked On LSU, and Locked On SEC for an all-Louisiana 2-hour block of your favorite teams here on the Locked On Podcast Network. So make sure you go and check us out over on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. And of course, don't forget to go and check out Locked On NFL after you're done here as well. So for the New Orleans Saints, in this game up against Arizona, one of the biggest question marks that we had about this team was, do they have the personnel to run this 3-4 scheme and to be able to go out there and then, get pressure on the quarterback, stop the run, all that? I think objectively speaking, stopping the run is still a question mark for the New Orleans Saints, if not just still an unproven improvement there so far, or a lack of showing improvement there so far, if that makes sense. So still have to answer that question, right? The Saints have not succeeded there yet, it feels like. However, when it comes to the pass rush, things off to a very good start for the New Orleans Saints. 5 sacks in this game, with 4 of them coming from the defensive line. And then they were added, and then they added another one with Alontae Taylor in a very clutch third down, perfectly timed and dialed up blitz by defensive coordinator Brandon Staley. I thought all of that came together to show that, the Saints can still absolutely do this, because part of the 3-4 defense and sort of the Fangio-esque version of the 3-4 defense is also having that defensive back like Alontae Taylor who could go out there and rush the passer and help you out there. I think I said, by the way, that they had 4 sacks by their defensive line. It was 3 sacks by the defensive line, 1 from the linebacker and Pete Werner, and then another one by Alontae Taylor. So let me correct that real quick before I go on. But that is a big part of it, right? Your ability to be able to have the edge rushers that are standing up on the outside, your interior guys that are eating up some of those interior offensive line players, creating some one-on-ones for those edge rushers, as well as for those interior linemen, but then also having that star position that you can rush from, having that linebacker that you can pull from the second level, just like they did with Pete Werner. And so I think all of those things were there, but really like the Pete Werner one was, you chase him out of bounds. And so a big part of that was how the New Orleans Saints were also able to contain, a lot better than they did last year at least, a mobile quarterback. Kyler Murray ran 7 times in this game for 38 yards, just an average of 5.4 yards for a quarterback that's scrambling a long of 13 for New Orleans. That is a huge improvement for the Saints. And big shout out to my good friend Seth Lewis, who gave me this one. But the Saints last time that they had 5 sacks in a game was against the Commanders last year in week 15. And they only did that one time during the regular season. So even though it was only technically 3 games ago, 4 games ago, plus an offseason in between, the reason why that's important is that the Saints only did that once last year, all told, having 5 sacks in a single game. And they did it against a mobile quarterback, but a mobile quarterback that still ate them up. This year, they start off with that number, hitting 5 sacks and effectively doing well, or doing better than expected, at least, in containing a mobile quarterback in Kyler Murray. Now, they still surrendered 5.4 yards per carry as a whole, including Trey Benson, who had 8.6 yards per carry, but they did limit James Conner, who had 12 carries, to just 3.3 yards per carry. So with that big 52-yard run by Trey Benson, that's really what kind of, made things worse for New Orleans. Without that big 52-yard run, if that one stopped short where it almost looked like it was going to be, but then the Saints lost contain over on the edge, we're talking about a very different day. Instead of them having 146 yards, they're under 100 yards potentially. Instead of Trey Benson having 69 rushing yards on a nice day, he has, 17 yards on the day instead. And so I think that those are the things that we kind of look at contextually and say, man, one play shy, and that ends up changing everything. But as we always say, the NFL is won, NFL games are won or lost by a handful of plays at most. And you think about it, the big run by Trey Benson. You think about the big pass down the right sideline to Marvin Harrison Jr., the great defensive play by the Cardinals safety on a ball that looked like it was going to be caught by Juwan Johnson to give the team an opportunity to tie or take the lead with a 2-point conversion late in that game if they wanted to go for the win. Those are 3 plays that ended up shading what the rest of this game looks like, which had no turnovers. And so it became the big offensive plays where you could find them, or those stand-up defensive plays when it mattered. Oh, by the way, also the blocked field goal by Brian Brzee, and then the sack by Alontae Taylor, same thing there. Those go into that handful of plays. There are your 5 plays that effectively made this game what it was, or at least helped to tell the story of this game. You can't tell the story of this game without those 5 plays. So excellent stuff for the New Orleans Saints pass rush, which was otherwise a question mark. Let me tell you why Blake Grupe missed his 37, 38-yard field goal. So we spoke to him on Tuesday in the locker room, and one of the things that he told us was that he was in a rush in that one. Like, he takes full responsibility for missing that punt. He said that the operation was fine, but what happened was that after that incomplete pass in the end zone to Rashid Shaheed that should have been a pass interference call, in my opinion, the team was kind of, frustrated on that, and they were kind of combating that call. And so by the time that they got to the line, because the officials started the 40-second play clock immediately after the incompletion, by the time they got to the line, they had 9 seconds left. And so on the play clock. And so Blake Grupe had a choice. Do I not let this bother me and just kind of go through the operation, or do I wait it out and take the delay of game? And weighing that kind of put him in a third option to where he ended up rushing the kick and then he missed it. So he learned from this as a bit of a veteran learning moment. Now he's a little bit of a better veteran after this, because he basically said, if I ever end up in that situation ever again, and it's a 37, 38-yard kick, I'm taking the delay of game, and I'm kicking a 42, 43-yarder because the percentages are effectively the same. So a good learning moment there for Blake Grupe, and a really good sense of awareness to just kind of say, nope, I got rushed. That one was on me. And I want to give a shout out to Kai Kroger, who had a phenomenal day punting as well, averaged 50.5 yards per punt. We'll dive into some of his numbers as well as, of course, more, and starting to look ahead to the San Francisco 49ers in our episode tomorrow. We appreciate you very much, as always. Make it a part of your day, part of your routine for saying yes to me and the show. If you see me, please say hi. If you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing, how you living. Let me know how you momming them. And trust Who Dat Nation, I'll holla at you.